Representative Blanton,
Present in the room.
Representative Fleming,
Present in the room.
Representative Hatton,
Present in the room.
Representative Jenkins, Representative Riley,
Present in the room.
Representative Sharp,
Present in the room.
Senator McGarvey.
Present remotely from my district.
Thank you. Senator Nemes,
Present in the room.
Senator Schroeder.
Present remotely from the district.
Thank you. Senator Storm.
Present remotely from my district.
Okay. Senator Thomas. Senator Wise. Vice Chair Howell.
Present in the room.
Vice Chair Beckler. Co-Chair Carroll.
Present remotely from out of state.
And Co-Chair Nemes.
Present in the room. I would also note that Vice Chair Beckler is here. I think he was on mute when he said present, but he's present remotely from his district, I suppose. Lynn, is that right?
That is correct. Sometimes I'm technologically challenged. Sorry for not hitting the unmute button.
That's what millenniums do for you older generation. We take care of you. Make sure you get called for the roll call.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right. We have 3 orders of business before we get rolling. Number 1 is I need a motion to approve the minutes from October 14th.
Second.
Got a motion from Representative Blanton, a second from Representative Fleming. All in favor signify by saying aye. All
Aye.
nay. All who are against it say nay. The minutes have been approved. Also, number 2, at the October 14th meeting, the committee adopted the child fatality panel report by voice vote. Statute requires that reports be adopted by a roll call vote. That was my fault. Is there a motion to adopt the report?
Motion.
Motion by Blanton, second by Representative
Beckler.
Jenkins. All in favor?
Aye.
No, I was about to mess up again. If we didn't have staff, we'd do this next month. Let's have a roll call on adopting the report.
Representative Blanton,
Aye.
Representative Fleming,
Aye.
Representative Hatton,
Yes.
Representative Jenkins, Representative Riley,
Yes.
Representative Sharp,
Aye.
Senator McGarvey,
Aye.
Senator Nemes.
Did you get that?
I did. Thank you.
Okay.
Senator Schroeder,
Aye.
Senator Storm,
Aye.
Senator Thomas, Senator Wise, Vice Chair Howell,
Aye.
Vice Chair Beckler,
Aye.
Co-Chair Carroll,
Aye.
and Co-Chair Nemes.
Aye.
Thank you.
With a vote of
So moved.
I've got a motion by, I don't know, was that you, Sarah? And a second. Call roll.
Representative Blanton,
Aye.
Representative Fleming,
Aye.
Representative Hatton,
Yes.
Representative Jenkins, Representative Riley, Representative Sharp,
Aye.
Senator McGarvey,
Aye.
Senator Nemes,
Aye.
Senator Schroeder,
Aye.
Senator Storm,
Aye.
Senator Thomas, Senator Wise, Vice Chair Howell,
Aye.
Vice Chair Beckler,
Aye.
Co-Chair Carroll,
Aye.
and Co-Chair Nemes.
Aye. All right, the minutes with a vote of 14-0 have been amended to reflect the adoption of the child fatality panel report. Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat of this meeting. We have on our agenda 2 items: the County Attorney Traffic Safety Program and the Louisville Community Bail Fund. We'll have testimony on that second, but we'll start with the County Attorney Traffic Safety Program. Before I turn it over to staff, I would note we have several of our county attorneys here today. Thank you for coming, to each of you, and in particular, my county attorney. We love all of you guys, but my county attorney, Mike O'Connell, is here, and so I'm very happy that you're with us, Mr. O'Connell. Staff, go ahead. Take over.
Hello, I'm William Spears.
And I'm Jacob Levins.
Go ahead.
This report reviews Kentucky's County Attorney Traffic Safety Programs, or CATS. Kentucky Acts Chapter 190, Section 15 from 2021 requires this committee to review the system of traffic safety programs operated by county attorneys in the Commonwealth in fiscal year 2020. This is the final report related to the statutory charge. In the 2012 regular session, the General Assembly passed House Bill 480, granting county attorneys authority to operate a traffic safety program for traffic offenders prior to the adjudication of their offense. This is a diversionary program that should result in the dismissal of a citation upon completion. This allows participants to avoid receiving points on their licenses and increases in insurance premiums. These operate differently from state traffic school offered by the Transportation Cabinet. State traffic school may be offered by district courts in lieu of other penalties, but it does not result in dismissal and will not prevent increases in insurance premiums. This table shows the number of counties with CATs and the total number of participant completions for all programs. Most county attorney offices operated a program, and more than 30,000 offenders completed these programs each fiscal year. CATs are primarily governed by one statute. It allows county attorneys to operate a traffic safety program to divert offenders. They may charge a reasonable fee, which can only be used to pay office operating expenses. These expenses are not defined in statute. By October 1st of each year, county attorneys must report to the Prosecutor's Advisory Council the fee charged for the program and the number of offenders diverted by traffic offense. This information is then reported by PAC to the Legislative Research Commission pursuant to statute. The statute establishes an additional $25 fee payable to the court clerk, who pays it into an agency account with the Administrative Office of the courts. This revenue is to be used for hiring deputy clerks and enhancing deputy clerk salaries. An amendment to the statute established a $30 fee to be forwarded to the Finance Administration Cabinet. This fee is divided among 9 groups, which is discussed in Chapter 2 of the report on page 10. Statute requires the Attorney General to submit an annual report to LRC. The report is to contain the total number of traffic offenders diverted into CATs by county and offense, as well as the fee charged by each program. This mirrors the information that must be sent to PAC. Currently, PAC sends the report to the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the chairs of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. County attorneys have some discretion to determine eligibility, such as considering the severity of the offense and the number of times an offender has participated. However, statute sets restrictions on eligibility. Offenders are excluded if they are alleged to have driven under the influence, without insurance, if they hold a commercial driver's license, if they were cited for an offense resulting in mandatory revocation or suspension of license, if they didn't have a license, or had a suspended or revoked license. CATs are either self-operated by the county or provided by a vendor through an online platform. The 2 vendors used are Advent FS and DriveSafe. These vendors do not have written agreements with counties, but have informal agreements to send portions of the fee to county attorneys, the Finance Administration Cabinet, and the Administrative Office of the courts. In fiscal year 2020, there were 102 counties with CATs. Most counties used a vendor, with 40 counties using Advent, 35 using DriveSafe, 3 counties using both vendors, and 24 counties self-operating. The study focused on the counties with vendors, as these were consistent programs that could be compared with the state traffic school. While the 2 vendors offered different content, the courses were comparable. This is discussed further in Chapter 2 on page 13. The statute for CATs outlines requirements and prohibitions, but it does not address the need for adequate internal controls to ensure that requirements are followed. Internal controls are policies and procedures that provide reasonable assurance that statutory objectives are achieved. More specifically, these are related to effectiveness and efficiency, reliable reporting, and compliance with applicable laws and regulations. While statute does not provide internal controls for the expenditure of program revenue, the Kentucky County Attorneys Association has provided guidance on how county attorney offices should use money for paying office operating expenses. The 2021 guidance has 18 examples of appropriate expenditures and 14 examples of inappropriate expenditures. For example, salaries, benefits, and retirement costs for personnel are appropriate, while salary supplements for county attorneys in excess of the statutory limits are not. The lack of a specific internal control framework is consistent with oversight of county attorney offices in general. The Auditor of Public Accounts, the Prosecutor's Advisory Council, and the Department for Local Government all have some statutory role related to county attorney offices, but none have duties specifically directed at CATs. The APA has permissive authority to audit county attorneys. It is currently working with Kentucky County Attorneys Association to begin agreed-upon procedures reviews of county attorney offices. These procedures will cover a broad range of objectives without conducting a financial audit and will include a review of how traffic safety program revenue is spent. County attorneys are required to submit budgets to the Prosecutor's Advisory Council, though PAC does not oversee traffic safety program fees. PAC is responsible for sending annual reports to the Legislative Research Commission summarizing the number of offenders diverted and the fee charged. PAC does not verify that the data is correct. The Department for Local Government has broad authority over the county budget system. While county attorneys are not mentioned in its statute grants DLG's state local finance officer the authority to inspect financial operations for all county officials and to provide assistance with contracting matters. Recommendation 3.1 is the APA and the Kentucky County Attorneys Association should continue moving forward with agreed-upon procedures. Procedure findings should be used to expand agreed-upon procedures cycles to include reporting requirements, fee distributions, and ineligible offenders. Recommendation 3.2 is the APA, the Association, PAC, and DLG should work together to draft and propose for the legislature a more permanent internal control framework once the agreed-upon procedures cycle concludes. Discussion should include findings and recommendations from this report.
Although the statutory framework previously discussed established expectations and prohibitions related to CATs, the lack of an adequate internal control framework creates risk related to 4 statutory objectives: reporting, ineligible offender participation, use of fee revenue, and distribution of fee revenue. There is no process in place to ensure the information reported by county attorneys to PAC is consistent and accurate. As a result, there is also no process to verify the information sent to LRC leadership. KCAA officers stated that county attorneys generally do not verify information sent to PAC. PAC officials stated the form should provide the county attorney portion of the charge. A staff analysis of fiscal year 2020 fees indicates that the forms may provide an overestimate of the county attorney portion. KCAA officials estimated that the average county attorney portion was about $80, but more than 90% of fees submitted in fiscal year 2020 were greater than $80. The average fee was about $126. The overestimate may be due to ambiguity in the PAC form. The top line on the slide shows what the report requests in the fiscal year 2021 form. It asks for total cost, but does not ask the reader to subtract the FAC or vendor fees. Before fiscal year 2021, the form incorrectly requested the total cost less a $30 AOC fee. Changing the form to disaggregate fees could provide more meaningful information to PAC and the legislature. The ambiguous form, combined with high reported values, means that PAC and LRC cannot be reasonably confident that fees are consistently and accurately reported each year. Breaking out the fee would ensure the expected information is submitted and there would be no confusion over an $80 or $126 average. Recommendation 3.3 is Pat should consider reviewing the CATS form to determine whether changes are necessary. At minimum, it should consider whether to disaggregate the total by vendor fee, county attorney fee, AOC fee, and FAC fee. In other words, the form should be completely clear about what is expected. Recommendation 3.4 is Pat should consider whether to request that staff develop processes to more formally follow up on incomplete or apparently inaccurate information from county attorneys. For example, staff could quarterly review a sample of CATS forms to ensure that submitted data is consistent and accurate. This should be done prior to reporting the information to LRC. There is no formal process for determining whether ineligible offenders are participating in CATS. As a result, the risk is high that ineligible offenders are participating contrary to statute. In a review of 2014 CATS reports, staff found 17 instances across 4 counties where county attorneys stated that ineligible offenders participated in CATS. Transportation Cabinet officials provided a table of 281 instances of CDL offenders participating in CATS. These offenses occurred in 2007, 2010, and 2014 through 2021 across 65 counties. The Cabinet was made aware of these after CDL holders contacted them, as well as through review of expungement orders and diversion reports. Legislative Oversight staff are in the process of reviewing CourtNet to ensure there are no outstanding issues to be resolved with the 281 offenders. These offenders are a small percentage of the total, but it may not be a complete estimate. Although this information was provided by the Cabinet, there is no mechanism for catching the instances. There may be more CDL offenders than we are aware of, or there may be offenders from another restricted category. There is no statutory guidance for resolving instances of ineligible participation for CATS, but guidance does exist for the state traffic school, and similar guidance could be used for CATS. Statute requires the Cabinet to notify the sentencing court when any person sentenced to state traffic school was ineligible. It also requires that the sentencing court return the ineligible offender's case to an active calendar for a hearing. A similar process could be used for CATS to notify courts when ineligible offenders participate. Recommendation 3.5 is Transportation Cabinet staff should continue to document cases where offenders with CDLs are participating in or have participated in CATS. They should also ensure that CDL offenders have not had convictions expunged. Recommendation 3.6 is KCAA should work with the Transportation Cabinet to draft guidance for county attorneys to ensure that Cabinet officials receive notice when an offender attends a county attorney safety program. Recommendation 3.7 is the legislature may wish to consider amending statute to include CATS for notification of ineligible offenders. The current statute alerts courts when an ineligible offender attends the state traffic school and is a good example of a control. KRS 186-574 6C allows county attorneys to charge a reasonable fee to program participants, but restricts use of that revenue. The statute intends for fee revenue to be used for county attorney office operating expenses, but does not define that term. There is no formal process to ensure CATS revenue is being used appropriately. This increases the risk that fee revenue could be used for purposes contrary to statute. For example, a 2020 Auditor of Public Accounts exam found that CATS and delinquent tax revenue was used on credit card balances. KCAA provides formal guidance on how fees or money paid to county attorney offices shall be used for operating expenses. A 2005 Attorney General opinion recognized an earlier version of the bulletin and cited the court case Funk v. Milliken as legal precedent. The previous bulletin focused on revenue from cold check collection and delinquent taxes, but these had the same requirements to be used on office operating expenses. The association is also working with APA to finalize agreed-upon procedures to review county attorney offices. This will include a procedure to judgmentally sample CATS revenue and determine if it was spent in accordance with statutes. APA and KCAA have not addressed the lack of contracts or procurement processes. Neither Advent nor DriveSafe use written agreements for providing traffic safety programs. DriveSafe has drafted a written agreement, but county attorneys have not requested it. Both vendors receive the entirety of the fee from participants and distribute its parts to county attorneys, FAC, and AOC. A formal agreement could serve as a control to prevent waste, abuse, or inefficiencies. It may also prevent any confusion over the obligation of vendors, distribution of fee components, or to help settle disagreements. As an example, the unused DriveSafe contract clearly states how to divide offender fees. Recommendation 3.8 is the KCAA should consider working with the state local finance officer and PAC to draft an agreement template for county attorney offices to use that outlines the responsibilities of the vendor and county attorney offices. Recommendation 3.9 is the Attorney General's office should consider promulgating regulations establishing parameters for operating expenses and a requirement for the use of agreements by county attorney offices when conducting business with CATS vendors. Statute requires CATS participants to pay a $25 fee to AOC and a $30 fee to FAC. Staff analyzed data from the statewide accounting system to verify that AOC and FAC were distributing their fees in accordance with statute. FAC was dispersing its payments properly, but staff could not verify how receiving departments and funds expended the money. The Comptroller's Office said it is willing to work with the departments to track the expenditures. AOC appropriately expended its funds, though as one-time payments to staff instead of as salary increases. While AOC used its funds appropriately, it was using a generic revenue source code named Other Receipts. This generic code made it difficult to track use of CATS funds. AOC officials were not aware of the county attorney fee revenue source code, but have since started using the more appropriate code. Recommendation 3.10 is AOC should continue using the CATS revenue source code in the future. Before we take questions, I want to thank the County Attorneys Association, PAC, and APA. They took questions and provided data throughout the process. We also appreciate their feedback on finding sheets, which included our findings and recommendations. On October 28th, we provided an early report draft based on their feedback. And we will now take questions.
All right, I will ask the first question and wait to see if anyone else has a question. So we did a lot of these. We did this review, a very good review, and I appreciate you guys for doing this. This is, I think, this is Mr. Blevins' first report with us. So congratulations on that. So when we went into this came out of the last general session, or session of the General Assembly. We were informed that there may have been some misconduct that was being engaged in related to these programs. After looking at what we've looked at here and doing my own questioning of various county attorneys' offices, I'm happy to note that I've not found any corruption, misconduct, any of that stuff. In particular, there was allegations that there were particular county attorneys who had investments or ownership interests in these two companies. I think that I'm satisfied that is untrue. That's a statement that lacks any veracity. I don't know about maybe when it was at the inception 10 years ago. I don't know about that, but it doesn't exist today, and it hasn't existed for the last few years if it ever did. So I'm happy to note that. There are a number of things that you guys have identified, that our staff has identified, that could be improvements, and a number of recommendations to shore up the process. This is a 10-year review, if you will. These programs became legal or effective in 2012. So this is a good time 10 years later to fix some of the programs. But is my outlining of what we found in this outline in this report, is that fair? Is it largely technical? Some miscoding issues that need to be addressed and fixed. Is that an accurate portrayal of the findings of the staff?
I would generally agree with that. We don't have any specific, aside from the APA's report from 2020, we don't have any specific evidence that things are going wrong. But there are a lot of processes in place. Well, sorry. In most cases, there are not processes in place.
Yeah.
We would feel better if the processes were in place to catch anything that could be happening, and especially to provide better information about how much revenue is coming into the county attorneys.
And so that would go from, and just looking at the recommendations, the bigger ones in my view are more, the more hefty ones would be to maybe ensure that we have an RFP process or some kind of contracting process up front where we can make the programs more uniform, perhaps, that they would reach the appropriate standard. I know we've mentioned the Department of the Cabinet a number of times. In my view, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. It seems to me that I don't really want people from Frankfurt that are unelected having this kind of control. It seems to me that PAC is the right organization, PAC and the Attorney General, which are the statutes are replete with oversight of these county attorneys' offices in PAC and the Attorney General's office. So it would seem to me with those slight amendments, I think I don't know that there's anything in the report that I particularly take issue with. I think they're improvements to the system. I want to talk about the 3 counties that we didn't look at. I think there were only 3 that don't use any program. Is that correct?
Let me double check that very quickly.
I know one of those is a county that I represent in Oldham County. And I didn't know if there were others.
18. Sorry, let me bring up a reference slide very quickly. So this is just showing the number of counties that have these. If you look in 2020, there's a total of 102. So there's actually 18 that don't have any programs.
Okay. 3 of them use Advent and DriveSafe.
That's right.
Okay. All right. And did we do any review of those counties' programs?
No, we didn't look at the independent ones. That would just be a huge increase in scale because essentially you're looking at 18 more. The ones that self-operate, you'd be looking at 24 more programs. So that requires comparing those with the 3 we have now.
Okay. And you referenced, now moving to expenditures, the statute allows these monies to go toward operating the office. Is that correct?
Yes. And just to be clear, when it says that, it is also including personnel. So you could pay for salaries with that as well.
And I think that was one of the major catalysts to getting this done, is to make sure that we had enough prosecutors to keep our community safe. You mentioned that some of it went toward paying off credit card bills. Is there any indication that those credit card bills weren't initially for the operation of the offices?
I am not as familiar with that. I would ask APA staff because they are available. That was found during their analysis. The reading of the report, it did not appear to me that it was for operations of CATs. I would ask of them just to be sure, but it did not appear to me.
And I'll follow up with the auditor there?
Auditor public account staff.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We have a question from Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the report. I've received comments from the past on this particular program. It's good to see that things are clean, and I expect them to be. Just knowing quite a few counties, including my own county attorney in Jefferson County, are good individuals in terms of making sure the money is prudently spent and programs are delivered. I want to ask just a couple of questions, or maybe one question, and I'm just trying to more informational purposes. When you look at, I'm just going to strictly look at the total fee. If you look at the total fee and you take out the vendor and the AOC and the finance and cabinet, I'm looking at roughly, and I just randomly picked a couple of counties, around 50 to 60% of the remaining funds that go back to the county attorney. Is that a rough idea? Was that a rough number? A good number?
Okay, just to be sure, which numbers are you looking at? Because there is some confusion. We're concerned that those may not be accurate numbers, so I want to make sure what you're looking at first.
I'm looking at the total fee.
Total fee?
Yeah, the total. So in your Appendix B.
Okay, in the
so nothing. I'll take Jefferson County. Nothing depending on Jefferson County, but Jefferson County, their fee is $244.
Mm-hmm.
So if you back out the drive safe, if you AOC and F&A, then that remaining amount goes back to the county attorney's office. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that equates around 50-60%. Is that fair? Is that what you sort of see?
I'm gonna say that feels about right to me. I'm gonna check with Jacob, make sure it's right for him.
That's about right, but it does vary between
Sure,
counties.
and I got that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is in your mind, based on your research, is that is that typical or is that standard? And then when you say reasonably rate, what are you comparing that to? What's your standard rate? I mean, what does that mean?
You want to start that first, and I'll add.
Yeah. In our conversations with the KCAA, they indicated that they wanted their total price to end up roughly the same as it would be if somebody paid their ticket to be competitive, essentially, and stay in that ballpark.
And that's pay their ticket with court costs.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, if it was higher, there'd be no reason to get in this program because it'd be cheaper just to go to court.
Mm-hmm. But reasonable isn't necessarily defined. So.
Yeah, it is not defined in statute.
It's not defined. Okay. Okay. Well, I just more of a curiosity question, and I know the county attorneys that have a lot of other expenses and so forth, so there is some flexibility for them to reallocate that. So that's good. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Co-Chair Beckler.
Thank you. I was wondering if you were able to determine why the RFP process was not used.
We weren't able to establish any clear reasons for it, simply that there are no contracts being used at this time.
I believe we got a comment at one point that in the past they attempted it and it became complex, but that's as far as we got with that line of questioning.
I just wonder about the complexity, since I believe that the state, when the state school offers or requires an RFP. So I wonder about that. I'm also wondering about the uniformity of the costs. I know you said that the fees are meant to be less than going to court. Otherwise, people would probably not use them. Is it, from your studies, does it appear that that is the case all over the state?
We did not directly compare every rate in the state with, I suppose, what a typical fee would be. They don't appear to be massively higher than that. They all appear to be in a pretty reasonable range. See if I can find my
And a big part of that is not just the total price tag, but the money you save on possible insurance premium increases from getting a traffic.
That is true.
Sure. Were you able to determine why a county attorney, a particular county attorney, went with one vendor as opposed to the other? Was they just had a feeling? Was there any documentation that one is better than the other, at least in some part of the program?
The curriculum appeared to be pretty comparable. There were different areas of emphasis. I think KCAA representatives might be able to fill you in a little bit more on reasons for picking one over the other. From what we can tell, it seems like personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
But not cost of the program.
No, the costs are pretty similar. I believe they're one is 35, one is 40. So you're not paying a huge difference depending on who you pick.
And so there's no long-term contract. If I happen to be a county attorney and I don't want the attorneys in the committee to kind of shiver over that thought, but could I theoretically engage both vendors? One, just go back and forth. Not saying that would be the wise thing to do, but could I do that?
Yes, but before we get to that, I do want to clarify something very quickly. They don't have written agreements. Our understanding is they have verbal agreements, so they talk about the general idea of what they want them to do and requirements. On to your actual question, yes, you could go back and forth. There's nothing restricting them from staying with a certain vendor for a certain number of years. It's entirely what they want to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would note that there are three, Chairman Beckler, that use that our report found that use both, so that is done, it appears. And I would also note that that my county attorney sent me a link, not because I got a ticket, but to test it. And so I've tested over the last week. And the programs, I'm not talking about all 120 counties, I'm talking about Jefferson. It was a pretty good program, and I refreshed myself on some things that I didn't know about. And so, the counties that, maybe all counties that have it are doing that similar program. I hope they are. If they're not, I would suggest that they do that. But, we're going to have the county attorneys come up in just a minute. and answer some of the questions that have been asked, especially from Representative Beckler, and I know there are some more. So hang tight. We may have more some questions for you gentlemen, but I think, I don't know who's leading this. Is it Ms. Old and Ms. Tapke? Come on up and you have the floor.
This never ceases to be less intimidating sitting in this spot. I'm Stacy Tapke, the Kenton County Attorney, and I'm presently the president of our Kentucky County Attorneys Association. And I have with me here today our president-elect, Jenny Oldham from Hardin County. And as you mentioned, we've got one of our board members and your county attorney, Mike O'Connell. And I believe on, hopefully virtually, we have Joe Ross, the Logan County Attorney, as well as Martin Hatfield, the Pulaski County Attorney, if he was able to join. Worth noting that Joe and Martin are both two members of our 3 county attorney representatives on the Prosecutor Advisory Council. So that, I think, would be good for any potential recommendations as far as PAC. Would you prefer, I provided a letter to the committee that kind of goes over everything. I'm happy to go over that again. Or if you would prefer to just kind of open it up to some questions.
We've received that. I think if you could hit the high point, Stacy, then we can have any questions that might be asked.
Okay, great. The high points are this. These programs serve twofold purposes. The first is, of course, the driver, the motorist, is getting some education. I don't know about the rest of you all, but the last time I took driver's ed was when I was 16 years old, got my driver's license, and I was out the door. So this is a good opportunity, and I use Advent. I've also done the program, so I know it's got some good tips about defensive driving, some other techniques. The other benefit is when you all passed this originally and then is amended, and it was overwhelmingly voted in, as I recall, it is sort of helping reduce some of the, am I feedback, causing feedback? Okay. It also helps us supplement the funds. Believe it or not, we appreciate all that you give us to prosecute the laws that you pass. It's not enough. We have to supplement salaries. I think Jenny could tell you she has to supplement victim advocates because we don't have enough funding to get the prosecuting job done. This isn't county work, this is prosecution work. And so this has sort of replaced what we used to have in cold checks. As you can imagine, nobody's writing those anymore, so this has helped. I think my numbers that were provided to you of what I generate are a little off in the attachment, but they do provide some revenue and some relief. The other thing to note is you provide me $3,000 to operate, again, my prosecutorial office. So my IT bill is $1,500 a month. So you can see how we're sort of forced in a way to rely upon these funds and delinquent taxes. So that's part of what this provides. And there's other people who benefit from the fee allocation as well. Our deputy clerks, as you know, I know they appreciate it amongst several others. One thing to note is how our systems work. Those who are utilizing Drive Safe and also Advent, I give it to you this way. Which do you prefer? Do you like pork or do you like beef? You know, they're both good. They've both got value. So which is your preference? Because when I look at the two vendors, that's what I'm looking at. Price-wise, they're very comparable. Part of it is what does my staff want to do? My gal who verifies the data, she likes the Advent system. She likes the platform. Another thing I would say is I disagree a little bit with the finding of the data and whether or not you can rely upon it. It's our staff who are putting the data in. So just so you understand, when they see the citation, they're checking on the citation to make sure the person is not a CDL holder. They're checking the CourtNet system to see what the driving history is. They're verifying and putting in the data themselves. And then we're able to generate an Excel spreadsheet that gives us all the name, the citation number, and other things. So we are able to verify the data. If you all are interested in a higher level of review beyond that, you're going to have to probably look at allocating some costs to do that. And then I will also say that my understanding is that to the transportation cabinet, I know it's been mentioned throughout here, We're not aware that this was something that was being sought by the Transportation Cabinet itself. We confirmed that, but we're happy to work with whoever on whatever. I think the PAC form, that's a great point. I think we could definitely amend that form to make it very clear what the fee is. I charge $170, and then that breaks down, you got 25, 30, and then the other, the vendor fee, and then my fee as well. And I think that's pretty consistent. I think almost 90 of our counties are using one of these vendor systems. So you're seeing consistency there. The APA, we're working with them on agreed upon procedures as far as operating expenses. There's several counties, myself included, I already pay for an audit. Audits are expensive, as you can imagine. So we do have some counties that have an operating budget of $25,000. So for them to pay the audit cost would be significant to their budgets, just so you're aware. But we've been working with the auditor's office. I know they're here. They've been great to work with. Hopefully they'd say the same thing about us, to try to come to a way where we can work together for transparency, but also understanding budget constraints. Anything else? I recommend ask your local county attorney, go to their office, look at their program, ask them what they do, ask them why they do it. I'm sure they'd be happy to show you the program and how it fits within their community. Because that's part of it is it's some places it's tailored to the community. I'm on the interstate, right? So I'm going to have some different criteria than if I don't have any interstate in my county. You might be looking 10 over on the interstate's different than 10 over on, near a school, for example. So we're happy to partner. We're open, transparent, ready to provide any information that's required. And if you have any questions, we're happy to do that. I would note, I wrote myself a little note. Last year, there was it looked like about 0.0008% of the participants were CDL license holders. We wish that number was 0. And we're not quite sure how that occurred, but, we don't think that the risk is high. We do think the risk is quite low that someone who's not eligible is getting referred to the program. Did I miss anything?
Stacy, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is Joe Ross. I'm the Logan County Attorney, and I am present. I did want to go farther on one of the things that Stacy spoke about relative to Mr. Beckler's question about why choose one or the other. When these two programs got started, they were kind of coming from different places. Stacy referenced Advent and cold checks. They were an established program, and they were doing cold checks before that. So a lot of offices were familiar with them beforehand. So a lot of people probably went with Advent for just having a known quantity. I was one of the few that went with Drive Safe early on, and that was largely based upon the fact that at the point in time that we started this, they were $1 cheaper, which I have no doubt was competitive, but my thought was $1 saved for a Logan Countyan is a good thing. So I made the choice to go with Drive Safe. At the point in time that I did that, I don't know that I had enough participants that it really would have even been enough to consider a formal bid process. But I know Mr. Nemus's county attorney, Mike O'Connell, did put out a formal bid at that point in time, and the cheaper price for them was Drive Safe. And then I think similar to what Stacy said about do you like chicken or pork, once you get into a relationship with one of these vendors, as long as they're doing a good job, you typically want to stay with them because you decide you like chicken or pork better, because it's easier for your staff to learn the processes we go through. And quite frankly, the processes are different for how things are collected, and that makes it somewhat difficult, I think, from my perspective, in a small office to have both vendors for this type of thing, because my staff would be spending more time trying to figure out which vendor to use and which not. And the whole point of this is just so we can staff our offices to a point that we can do our main job, which is be prosecutors. And the reason at the point in time that we didn't have a formal contract was I was going with an unknown quantity and an upstart, and they seemed to have a good program, but I wanted an opportunity that if I needed to break that relationship and move on, I had as much leeway. So I think a lot of those decisions, though, might not have been what you all would have preferred. We're done with good intentions. So I just wanted to pass that along from somebody who kind of started doing this only after the 2012 legislation passed.
And if I could add, from my perspective, and is this on?
Is it lit up?
It's not. Push there. There we go. So from my perspective, from Hardin County, I'm the 5th largest county. We do welcome this opportunity to, of course, talk about our budget and also to provide any information we can. From my budget, PAC provides me 45% of my operating salaries. So I would not have victim advocates. I would not have the staff to even staff district court at this point in my jurisdiction, were I not to either have more funding from the state or a way to generate revenue myself. Another thing to keep in mind, the evolution of these programs. Prior to having these programs in place, we still had the discretion to dismiss a ticket. We're all about second chances and an opportunity to get it right. Before these programs, it was just a straight dismissal. You didn't have the educational component. So that's very valuable to us. We are checking records. We want to make sure that there's learning going on. But we also are interested, frankly, in providing people second chances and breaks when it's appropriate. Let's see, there was something, CDLs, and there is a very small percentage. It was interesting information through this oversight to see what that percentage was. I know Stacy said it's very tiny. I believe that probably comes from out-of-state CDL drivers. So we do our checks, but I don't know that there's a good database, if it's not marked on the citation, for us to know that there's not an out-of-state CDL involved. And we'll answer any questions you have.
I want to mention two things. Quickly. Number one is your budgets are pretty complex. I don't know that we really all fully appreciate that. You said 45% of your personnel is come from PAC,
Sure.
which is a good thing. That leaves a big hole in your personnel. Also, with respect to operating costs, we give you $3,000 a year. This isn't meant to be a joke, but I have 6 lawyers in my firm, and I think we spend more than $3,000 on printing and toner. And that's not a joke. That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, we live off the written word, and the printer is important. So that's something that other committees need to look at. This is not a budget committee, and I know that this program was designed to help not only personnel costs but those types of things. So I think that's important to remember. But I do want to say, Chairman Carroll and I have very briefly discussed working together on some legislation on this. I want to highlight and get your particular comments on recommendation 3.2. I don't know if we can bring that up. It's slide 11.
I was going to say, do you need, let me move out of your way here. I got it here. Let's see. I got it right in there.
Which one was that?
It's this one, yeah. Agreed upon's.
And all 3.2 does, and it'll come up on the screen, is it says that we're going to, we recommend that the prosecutors, the county attorneys, work with all the groups that are mentioned, auditor, PAC, so forth, to craft some legislation to improve this process. I don't think there's problems for integrity or intent or anything of that nature, but I know that my 2 county attorneys, Mike O'Connell and Mr. John Carter. John's not running for re-election. I don't know if Mike is or not. I assume he is. I think he is. I don't know how long they'll be there. I have confidence in them. I don't know who the next ones will be, and that's true in 120 counties. So it's important that we have protocols in place to make sure that those types of things, the people in Jefferson County and Oldham County and all across the Commonwealth, are protected in the future. A lot of money go through these programs, and that has to be acknowledged. So that we need to make sure that we have the proper protocols in place. So is the County Attorney Association? Do you guys agree with recommendation 3.2, and are you committed to working together to that end?
So this is a reminder. So we're going to look for internal control. Part of what the auditor's office and we have talked about is we need to know what our 120 counties have as far as operating expenses. For example, I can tell you what Kenton County had. I don't remember the number today, but I do an audit, so you can see everything. And I'm a third largest county, so my budget's a lot more. You go to some of these very small counties, and if they've got $25,000 in operating expenses, what do you do to make that work? We've been talking about a lot of options, like maybe you adopted a special purpose government entity style review, depending on the amount of budget, that kind of a thing. But we've been committed to that process we've been working on it since, I think, seems like forever, but we've been working on it because we're trying to balance all of those things.
I wonder if we can make forever conclude before April 15th, 2022. Only Leader Jenkins was on this committee in 2012, and I know she wants to make sure that I think I'm speaking for her, we've not spoken about it. I'm sure she wants to make sure that the intent that when they passed it in 2012 is fully effectuated with protections for the public, both in safety on the roads and monetarily.
And we're welcome to, discussion and conversation and reviewing legislation. We just want to make sure we're at the table when those things are being discussed, since they are so directly, directed at our office and how we operate in those types of things. But I think, hopefully you have heard that we've been very cooperative, and we're happy to continue to cooperate to whatever's best for the Commonwealth.
And so I take that as a yes, you are committed to 3.2 and you work with us on
I think I don't have my sheet, but I think we did respond to the initial draft that we were fine with this recommendation, and we would continue to work with them.
I think like everything else, it comes down to money. So paying for our own audit comes out of these operating expenses. And so these smaller counties may not have that.
Yeah, and I don't know that this is going toward the audit only. This is going toward things like RFP process, going to that type of thing. Not to say that we're married to RFP, but some kind of making sure that we have protocols in place for contracting. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ask a question. My staff might have more insight. I know the different vendors that are used have curriculum and so forth, but I couldn't gather or find information on the folks that are doing self-operating. Do they have like a curriculum?
So it depends on the county. I don't have a full list. I can give you a couple of examples. For example, I know that in Fayette County, I believe they use Toyota cars and have an in-person. He, I think, has run that program for quite some time. He'd be better to tell you, but partners with law enforcement, they do more of an in-person. Henderson County, I know, again, there's a prosecutor and law enforcement that are doing kind of a more in-person. Other than that, since the overwhelming majority of us use a vendor, I'm not as familiar with the communities that are doing self-run programs.
Yeah, there's 23 of them, I believe, and there's the staff said there's 18 that are don't have a program at all. And I'm just curious, what the program or the criteria or curriculum, I should say, of those self-operating systems have and so forth. So, because I've heard anecdotally that you just send a check in and that's it. You don't go through any curriculum or anything like that. So it's an easy way to do that. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not as familiar. That may be a diversion program you're talking about, where you have to not get another ticket and they have to monitor you. So you would be checking every month to make sure, or week, to make sure that the person who was cited doesn't pick up another citation, because there's a diversion tactic in that, because every time you think about running that red light, you are reminded, I can't do that. I'm on this program where if I run that red light, I'm going to be paying for that first ticket and picking up another one, and my insurance is going to increase and that sort of thing. So that's my guess, but I'm not as familiar with anybody else's.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
As my own.
The self-operated, I would like to get a list of the counties that have the self-operated. I would note it doesn't mean they don't have a program. It just means they don't use one of the two. And also, I would also say the diversion is used all across the law. I know we don't have a lot of lawyers in the General Assembly anymore, but diversion, there's nothing wrong with diversion. It's not like it's a wink, wink, nod, nod, not a real thing. We use it for drug offenses, for violent. We use it all across the board. And so the word diversion is not something like nothing is happening. Just wanted to mention that. I know a lot of citizens think, well, I just pay the money and I don't have to do anything. Well, if you reoffend, it can be used against you again in the future. And we do that all across criminal law, including in traffic. Representative Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for digging into this issue further, for the LRC staff and their diligent work, and for the County Attorneys Association. So essentially, what we are doing here and have did here today is to look into misinformation, whether intentional or unintentional, I'm not going to judge, that was put out about some of our county attorneys in this Commonwealth. And what the research has shown, the investigation has shown, just what I thought it would show, and that was they're not doing anything outside of statute that's already set in there that's permissible for them. Now, may have highlighted a few things that make it better. I don't know. I'll let the County Attorneys Association and them decide that. But I just want to thank you all for looking into this and protecting the name of my county attorneys that's doing what they need to do to provide good service to the people of the Commonwealth. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Unless you have any concluding remarks, there are no other questions.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. So next, I'm gonna ask Ms. Windhorst to come up to the table, and you have, I think. Yes. And while you guys are coming up to the table, I think Ms. Cook is with you. While you're sitting
Mack.
down, we're going to. What's that?
Mac.
Ms. Mack. Thank you.
Whoops, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna ask for a motion to adopt the recommendation of the staff that
So
we
moved.
just went through. It's been motioned by Representative Fleming. Is there a second? Second by Representative Riley, and my good friend Jerry's over here making sure. Roll call vote. So let's call the roll. Thank you, Jerry.
Representative Blanton,
Aye.
Representative Fleming,
Aye.
Representative Hatton,
Yes.
Representative Jenkins, Representative Riley, Representative Sharp,
Aye.
Senator McGarvey, Senator Nemes,
Aye.
Senator Schroeder,
Aye.
Senator Storm, Senator Thomas,
Aye.
Senator Wise, Vice Chair Howell, Vice Chair Beckler,
Aye.
Co-Chair Carroll,
Aye.
and Co-Chair Nemes.
Yes. With a vote of 13 yeses and 0 nos, the committee report is adopted. Ms. Windhorst, you have the floor.
Okay. First, I'd like to introduce myself for those of you who do not know me. My name is Lois Windhorst. In 1981, I founded the first chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving here in Kentucky. So for the past 40 years, I have volunteered up until January the 11th when MAD hired me to be the regional executive director. I oversaw Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana. October the 29th, my position was up. Pull it closer. Okay. Anyway, my position was no longer because of lack of funding in Kentucky. So with that being said, I had and decided that I would continue to volunteer for MAD. It has been my life's work. I tell people that impaired driving, it didn't affect me until June of 1980 when we lost 2 family members to a repeat offender impaired driver. So once it affects you, at least for me, I could not turn my back. What happened to my family couldn't change the circumstances, but I sure didn't want it to happen to other people. So I want to kind of fast forward March the 1st in Jefferson County. I was aware of the bail project. I thought they bailed out protesters and different ones, but I really didn't know anything about them. At 6:30 on Monday evening on Dixie Highway, There was a 17-year-old girl who was on her way home. She had just dropped her brother at his baseball practice. She was headed back up Dixie towards Valley Station in Pleasure Ridge Park. An impaired driver crossed the line and hit Madeline head on. Madeline was a senior at Butler Traditional High School in Louisville. She worked part-time at Chick-fil-A there on Dixie. She was headed to Bellarmine, to the nursing program. What a wonderful person. When I tell people about impaired driving crashes and families, I always say there is a ripple effect. It affects the victims, the survivors, but then on the other hand, you have other families, maybe the driver's family, and I understand that. I have worked with impaired drivers in my volunteer time. So with Madeline, it wasn't a ripple effect, it was a tsunami for our community. My phone started ringing Tuesday morning at 6:30 in the morning. People who know me calling me about Madeline. That evening, we went to a candlelight vigil where, I am not exaggerating, hundreds of people came out to support the family. I have gotten to know her family, and like Madeline, they are exceptional. Her family, with the help of volunteers, they have raised money for Bellarmine University and set up an endowment fund so that other incoming nursing students will have a scholarship in Madeline's name. Today, I'm here for Madeline. What I found out on the 2nd, I received a phone call, and it was from one of our local reporters in Louisville, Natalia Martinez. At that point, I didn't know much about the offender, except for that he was impaired. He kept driving and hit a pole after crashing into Madeline's car. He jumped out, took off running, and it took some men from the AutoZone and a used car salesman there on Dixie. They chased him down and tackled him in a field and held him till the police got there. I didn't know what he had done before, but I soon found out. I found out that the middle of February, around the 12th, he was arrested in Jefferson County for his 3rd time in less than a year. He was outside of a car. They got a call on a disorderly person. When they arrived, they recognized him because of his former arrest. The police officer called for backup. It took 3 police officers to arrest him. He injured one of the police officers. The car that he had been driving was stolen, but he was outside of the car, so he wasn't charged with impaired driving at that point. He had guns that he had stolen, and so now he was back in jail for more charges. When I saw that his record expanded from 2012 in Ohio, he was a convicted felon. It was impaired driving. It was stealing guns. It was stealing cars. It was a felon with guns when he shouldn't have been in possession. Numerous arrests and convictions. Some way he made his way to Kentucky. I also found out that his day of crime actually started in Shelby County, Kentucky. He stole a car. He stole guns. Shelby County police were in pursuit of this man. Instead of catching him, he pulled off on a medium as he crossed into Jefferson County, there on 64 going west. They had called for the Louisville Metro Police Department to assist. He jumped the medium, ran down the hill. He broke into a home on that road. And then he came up to a barn where a woman was doing something and was she was told to run, and when she turned around, he was standing there with a gun pointed at her, and she ran. And she ran thinking she was going to be shot. He took her Ford truck. She made it to the house and called 911. This was in the afternoon. At 6:30 that evening, in their stolen truck, he hit Madeline. When I found out that a group called the Bail Project had bailed him out in February, then I started doing research. What and why? Why was he on the highway that day? To kill Madeline, to terrorize the woman at her home as he stole her truck. I found out that they had posted a $5,000 cash bond. And through research, I found out the average bond they post in Jefferson County is probably about $3,500 average. So then I did more research, and I found out that, and it was for all the right reasons, this nonprofit was formed, where people who didn't have the bail money and had done crimes that were not violent, and that was the beginning, that they would get out of jail instead of sitting there if they couldn't post a $500 bond. So with that being said, I started doing more research. I found in 2019 in St. Louis, they had put up bail for a domestic violent offender who had beat his wife within an inch of her life. As soon as they put up the bail, which was again $5,000, he left the jail, went straight to the house. He beat her again. This time she didn't make it. So in Kentucky, currently, we have 3 different bail funds working. In 1976, the General Assembly eliminated bail bondsmen. And in 2011, there were updates to current statutes of releasing offenders with low to moderate risk scores from after pretrial hearings. Governor Beshear, when he was elected the governor of the Commonwealth, January the 1st, 2020, I quote him from an article that was written. He said he wanted to revamp the criminal justice system without compromising public safety. What is going on right now in our communities, it is compromising our safety. I want to tell you that I have found that Oldham County, Hopkins County, there has been some activity with the Bail Project. When they were asked, they said they had done everything right. They had let the offender detox in jail. They told him upon release he was to go to treatment. There was nobody there when the jail opened the door and let him out to take him to an inpatient treatment facility. Nobody. Currently in Kentucky, a person who posts bond for someone, they are called a surety. And usually they have skin in the game. It's a family member, it's a close friend. And they're going to do everything in their power to make sure they follow the standards that the courts have put on the person who's being bailed out. In these cases, nobody has skin in the games. Yes, if they go to court, eventually they'll get their money back. These projects will. So it is very disheartening because I always say that impaired driving is 100% preventable. And let me tell you, make no mistake, the death of Madeline could have been prevented had it not been for the bail being put up for this man. You know, with criminal cases, there's 3 types of violations. you have your violations that are fines. Could be a traffic offense or something like that. Then you have your misdemeanors, and it's low-level crimes that would carry up to a $500 fine, possibly jail time up to a year. And then you have the felonies. The felonies are where the bad offenders fall into. These are people who have rape, domestic violence, and I don't talk about smacking someone, I'm talking about beatings. And one of the things we found out, the third group that operates in Louisville, Kentucky is called the Louisville Community Bail Fund. This bail fund, according to, I looked it up on state records, they are considered a corporation. And according to the law 43.510, it states in that law, and I'm going to read it to you, that it shall be unlawful for any person to engage in the business of bail bondsman as defined in Section 3 of this section. One is furnish bail or funds or property to serve as bail, or make bonds or enter into undertakings as sureties. Section B, make bonds or enter into undertakings as surety for the appearance of persons charged with any criminal offense or violation of law or ordinance punishable by fine, imprisonment, or death before any of the courts of the state, including city courts, or to secure payment of fines imposed and of costs assessed by such courts upon a final deposition or whatever. But anyway, you all know what I'm saying. So with that being said, sitting next to me, I want you all to meet someone who personally lost, and the Louisville Community Bail Fund was involved in her case. This is Yolanda Mack. Tell them your story.
Welcome, Mrs. Mack.
How you doing? Story is where my brother didn't ask to leave this earth. He got shot, execute style by a lady that out on bond, and she's still walking the streets. We done been in court so many times and then laid it over. We still waiting. And it's rough for our family because his mom is upset because she has now 4-stage cancer, and it's done spread it out through her whole body. And she might not even make it for the court hearing come next month, so it's a struggle for us and my family every day because we used to him being there on the time. He knocks on the door every day when he get up. I know his time. I'm up at his time every day, and he didn't ask to do that, and it's on camera, it's on film, everything. They got witnesses and everything, and it's still ain't nothing being done about it. We done had a birthday. We done had Virgil stuff for him. I'm going to have something every year for him because he deserved it. He didn't deserve to get killed that way at all.
So, Ms. Mack, it's my understanding that the person that has been apprehended for murdering your brother,
yes,
was released on a $50,000 full cash bond that was paid for by the bail fund. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was the Louisville Community Bail Fund. In October, in one of our circuit divisions, they actually, the judge, they had put up $30,000 cash for an individual who was actually involved in a shooting, drug dealing, everything. They put him on HIP, and when they went out to the house, the folks from HIP to check on him, he was running his business as usual, scales, the money, everything. So the judge actually sent $30,000 to the Commonwealth. They did not give them their $30,000. When questioned in court, they never even checked on this guy's record. And, you know, there is no checks and balances for these groups. I don't know if the national arm of the Bail Project knew of all the convictions and everything going on in Ohio with the man who killed Madeline. And now, used to, and I have a binder sitting on the floor that is full of cases. And what we found was that probably 50 to 60% of the cases where bail money has been put up, they are violent offenders. Rape, child pornography, you name it, it's in there. The bottom line is, and the reason I'm here today, it is important to me. And when I say important to me, I'm not asking you all to get rid of these three groups. But what I'm asking you is that if they are going to operate in Kentucky, we need to put outlines into law what they can and can't do. And, you know, I have no problem if it's a misdemeanor. But when you're talking about a bail project that raised millions of dollars and out in our communities putting up $100,000 cash, $50,000 cash, $30,000 cash, there is something that needs to be looked at by the General Assembly to protect the citizens of the Commonwealth. And I understand why bail is there. And I have to tell victims every day why it's in place. But the Macs didn't even know that 50,000 had been put out. They didn't even know that their brother's murderer was back out on the street. And so I'm asking you all today for your help in this matter. And not let us forget what happened to Madeline or to the Mack family.
Thank you both for coming. Here's my understanding. Bail is provided for in our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think either one of you are saying that we should get rid of bail.
Never.
That would take a constitutional amendment, and that's not the effort here. My understanding is these groups are raising a lot of money. And so it would seem to me that we need to ensure that that money being raised for the purpose of bail is being expended appropriately and not for the personal benefit of the folks running the organizations. We also, my understanding is the type of offense that we're talking about is not the minor types for which these programs say that they exist. But fundamentally, it seems to me that the situation is this. If I have a family member or an acquaintance get arrested, and they call me and they say, "Hey, Jason, can you bail me out?" I know that person. So I can say, yeah, I think this person's not a danger to themselves or the community, and they're probably going to show back up. Or I can say, no, that person's a danger, or they're not going to show back up. In some ways, you're vouching for the person you're posting bond for. You sign as a surety for on the document. But when a company does this, and I think this is something Kentucky recognized in the 1970s when we got rid of bail bondsmen. When a company does this, you divorce that knowledge of the defendant from the person posting the bond, thereby taking away the protection of the public aspect of bail bond, of posting the bail. That's my understanding. And what I'm hearing you say is that you think that we should put roadmap or put restrictions in place if we're going to allow these organizations to do these types of things in Kentucky, to make sure that you can do it for these offenses but not these other offenses, and then here's some other parameters for the protection of the public. Is that what?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Most definitely. I mean, he had injured a police officer. He had been charged with third-degree assault. He had been charged with robbery over 10,000 and being a convicted felon, and having guns, and they were stolen. And that fast he was out to do this to Madeline. And in Madeline's name, that's what we are asking for, are some guidelines on this.
Representative Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for coming today. I've been through your binder. I've got many hours sifting through the binder, and you're right. And unfortunately, the Commonwealth has been infiltrated, if you will, by bad actors who do so under the disguise that they're doing something good. They are skirting our laws dealing with bail bondsmen. There's no accountability to these individuals. They don't care that the people they're bailing out are appearing for court. They don't care whether or not they're reoffending. They don't care to lose the money that they put up. Okay, they raise millions of dollars for this very thing. And what do? We turn those that are endangering our citizenry of this Commonwealth, we just turn them right back out on the streets. And what do? They're costing our citizens lives. No regard for human life whatsoever. We're not talking about a $1,000 bond of somebody that can't get out on some kind of, we're talking $30,000, $50,000 bonds. And I'm like the chairman. My understanding of a bond to begin with, of the person that is putting up the bond, is that you're taking some type of responsibility to ensure that, one, they are not reoffending, and two, they show up for court. These people don't care. They're getting them out and they're driving on. They don't even know the individuals they're getting out. So I ask this question: is this good for our Commonwealth? Is this good for our citizens? And the answer to that is no, it's not. And that's why that Chairman Nemes and I we're working on legislation to address this very issue. We can't allow this to go on. The only people that's benefiting from this at the cost of the lives of your family member are the people that's running this organization. Go look up the expenses and the things they've been purchasing since they've started this company, and the millions of dollars that they've spent personally by getting people out of jail because they're taking outside money outside of Kentucky that's being raised, brought in here, and getting criminals and putting them right back out on the street to where they reoffend, and they're doing harm to our communities. Enough is enough. They came here, they haven't been here long, but we have to stop them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could I add something? Because we could go down to court and David Nichols' office, our clerk's office, we could pull the bonds posted and we could see the bail project, which the national arm, or the chapter that is in Jefferson County. But the third one, the Louisville Community Bail Fund, they're no longer putting their names when they post bail, the name of their organization. They have stopped doing that. So you have to know one of the people in their organization's names to see if you can find it. So that is something that, again, the accountability, we don't even know if it's them putting up the bail because we can't check anymore.
Chairman Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have to say that it's somewhat appalling what I'm hearing, but I can't say that I'm surprised by this. A couple questions that I have: have you all done any research? And I know that Representative Blanton mentioned some of the donors. Do we know who is donating to these organizations? Are there groups or individuals within our Commonwealth that are doing this, or are all the funds being generated from outside the Commonwealth?
Well, if you go on the Bail Project's website, the national arm or the local arm, I do know that the University of Louisville, the Ann Baden I think it's called Biden. Anyway, they are one of the sponsors. I don't know if they've donated money or what they have done, but you can't see it, the breakout of who is donating or what have you. The Louisville Community Bail Fund, it was actually corporations within the community, but, I haven't been able to see who actually made the donations to that fund.
And you said that are all of these groups not for profits, 501c3s?
Actually, I can tell you the first two. The National Bail Fund is a not-for-profit organization. The chapter of the national arm in Louisville is a not-for-profit. And to be honest with you, all I can tell you is the third one, the Louisville Community Bail Fund. When you go on Michael Adams' page or whatever and you look them up, they call themselves a limited liability company or an assumed corporation. I don't know. I don't know because they don't have a website. So I have no clue if they are nonprofit or if they are a corporation. Just by
All right, thank you. And Mr. Chair, just one final question. I guess it being not-for-profits, I struggle to see how it would be acceptable for a loss if the bail were to be forfeited and that being a proper expenditure to a not-for-profit. And I don't know what federal regulations under 501c3 would cover that, but and I have no doubts these organizations have researched the legalities of it, but I think it's obvious they're trying to work around our system. And Representative Blanton, Mr. Chairman, I would be more than happy to help with this on the Senate side to get some parameters put on these folks. This is unacceptable to our people in the Commonwealth. Thank you. Thank you all for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Blanton is fronting that issue, so I'll ask you to work directly with him. I'm also helping him as a wingman in this issue. I would note that these organizations, their donors probably don't know who they're getting out of jail. They're probably trying to do good things, which is what all of us support, and that is to get people who don't have the money out of jail who are charged with smaller crimes. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, sorry for your loss. That's something that I would totally agree that it should not have happened because obviously there's a failure in the system, and unfortunately you're affected by that. And I apologize that you had to go through all that. I wanted to ask. I know there's a website, nonprofit website that lists donors. Maybe not all of them, but a fair portion of them called GuideStar. They may or may not have it, but all nonprofits need to report 990s and other things that pertain to that. And so you might want to check that out and see if there's any information on those organizations you come across. I do want to ask you this, and I appreciate Representative Blanton taking the lead and representing the Chairman Nemes looking at this. And I'm sure they've gotten some things structured, but I'm not aware of that. But what suggestions or thoughts in terms of putting some criteria or requirements that we need to consider in drafting a bill to rein in and control and monitor the operations of these organizations to make sure they're fulfilling their mission and not sitting there abusing it and circumventing the situation?
Well, just from trying to look at things myself, I think it's very important that when you go into the courthouse to set up bail for somebody, that you have to put your organization's name plus the person carrying the money in to do it. I mean, I think that's important if someone wants to go back and look. But more importantly is actually who can they put up the bail for? How much money can be put up on a bail? You know, I just, these domestic violence cases, the murder cases, you know, anything that is a violent crime, you know, you have to look at these felonies. They're serious. And, you know, the man who took Madeline's life, it was $5,000 cash. And they gave that money to him. He's now sitting in a jail under a $500,000 cash bond. So I think it's really, really important we identify the offenses, you know, and I got to tell you, personally, you know, there is one woman who, the man who beat her within an inch of her life, they put up his bail money. And the first thing he did was start threatening her again, her family. She is so scared that she would not even come and testify. She is scared for her life, and good reason to be. So, you know, I think that it needs to be looked at, the offense, and we have pretrial services that they, within 24, 48 hours, they will go through and interview the offender, you know, and they put together their recommendations to the judges. And, you know, we have to look at these offenses in these communities. And I hate to say it, but a lot of the offenses that these groups have been letting out, they're domestic violence offenders against women. In the past 2 months in Indiana, and they have bail bondsmen, and I've been talking to Representative Mayfield. She's in the House up there, and she actually introduced a bill last year, didn't get passed, but in the past 2 months, 2 women have lost their lives because the National Bail Project came in, bonded out the individuals, and they went straight to their victims and shot them, both of them. That's 2 women in 2 months in Indy. So it's not just happening here in Kentucky, it's in other places too. And the criteria that you look at, and again, they have no skin in the game. Nobody was there to meet the killer or the offender in Madeline's case and take him to treatment and check him in, because they responded that he had a drug problem. That's why he had had all these issues over the years. But again,
Lois, the domestic violence situation, I think, is one that you can understand. The family knows.
Oh yeah.
That's why they're not bailing them out.
Yeah.
These organizations don't know, don't do the background check, may not even know the offense. And Ms. Mack, thank you for coming. Your testimony was eloquent and moving.
I appreciate it.
The judge tried to protect your family. $50,000 cash bond is high. The judge did what the judge should have done. They were required to post bail in Kentucky, and or put a bail a bail amount on defendants in Kentucky unless they're capital offenses and there's significant evidence. That's Section 16 of our Constitution. But the judge tried to keep that person in, and this organization paid $50,000 cash. Lois, you mentioned a percent of the cases that you reviewed that were violent. What percentage was that?
it was 50 to 60%. It was over 50.
Okay.
And a majority of them were domestic violence.
All right, we will be working on this issue, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. It's an important issue that we should be able to tackle in 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Chairman Neat.
Senator Thomas? Oh, Zoom's over. I didn't see.